The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day, everyone. We want to take a moment to welcome you all to this week's webinar session. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can see on your screen, today we're going to be talking about external references, or as you may have come to know and love them by XRefs, is more commonly the term you'll hear them talked about. So today we're going to have Christina and Volker running our session. To start, I'm going to put up a poll. If you could just take a moment to put in your answer here. We're curious how many of you may be watching with a big group. So if you could just put in whether you're just watching by yourself at your desk or if there's others with you, that would be very helpful to us. And I'll just give another couple seconds here, give a few more people a chance. All right, great. So it looks like the majority of you are just watching on your own, which is fine. Thank you again for joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Christina at this time, and we'll start this week's session.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you everyone for attending. So before we begin, we're going to start with just a couple of housekeeping items. If you've been to these sessions before, you'll know that we do have a question chat window over in your GoToMeeting slide. So if you have any questions, please put those in there and we'll answer them as time allows. Anything that's left at the end, if you want to just use the landing page link, it gives you some feedback, and you can add additional questions there. If there's something you missed, if there's something you want clarified, please let us know and we'll be happy to answer those. As well, these slides will be made available after the presentation. And currently, if you check our landing page, we do realize that we're a little bit behind with some of the recordings, but we are working on that, and they have been made and they will be put up to the site very soon. And Sean will be placing those links inside the chat window for you to use. Additionally, I wanted to let you know about some of our recent articles, and one in particular that has just been resolved, which is really great news. So with AutoCAD Architecture and MEP, there were some recent updates on the Microsoft side that were causing some stability issues, and here's an article about that if you want more information about which updates and if you need to remove those. But Microsoft did recently release a fix for that to resolve that behavior. So if you are experiencing that or someone in your office is, make sure you make them aware that this fix is available. All right, so our agenda for today, we're going to take a look at external references, as Sean said. We're going to look at attaching, detaching, how layers work when you're dealing with XRefs, some terms that are specific to XRefs such as nesting and overlay and attachment. We have a couple items I've marked with exclamation points if those are areas that you want to be careful of because they can have some odd behaviors. And then we'll also talk about updating, binding, demand loading, all these different terms that you may or may not have come across in the past, and we're just going to hopefully try to clarify some of that. Now, this is a broad overview of XRefs. We will be focusing mostly on working with DWG files, but we will be making, as I said, some additional information available at the end of this slide deck, and the slides will be available. And as always, give us feedback if you have more questions. So to start with, Sean, if you could do the next poll, I'd like to see how much everyone knows about XRefs. Just to get a feel for how long you've been working with them. You might have heard of them first time here. Maybe you've been working with them for a while. Maybe you're so cool that you practically invented XRefs, and that's great too.
So yeah, really quite across the board here. In terms of responses, just about every response is right at about 20%. So
we have freshman to senior cool kids in terms of XRefs.
Nice varied responses.
Well, actually, I think we may have the polls mixed up here a little bit. The poll we did see here was when were XRefs introduced, our trivia poll. And it appears that most people believe they were introduced in either Release 14, Release 9, and Release 24. Or 24. 24% they have always been in the product. Okay, correct answer is AutoCAD Release 11. Kudos to those who got that one right.
For the rest of us who just thought that was an urban legend, that's okay.
So I'll actually go ahead and run the other poll, Christina, then now, which is how much do you know about XRefs? So it looks like most have used it a little bit, but not too much. We have some that haven't ever heard of XRefs, and some that invented it. So
Excellent.
again, but most seem to have just dabbled in it a little bit, but not much more than that.
Okay,
Well,
perfect.
that's what this webinar is about, so awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully those of you who are just hearing about it, you'll have enough to start working with them, and if you've been dabbling a little bit, maybe find some more tips, broaden your use of XRefs. All right, thank you both for those slides and that bit of trivia. All right, so I wanted to start with just talking about XRefs and why we even care about them, why they're important, how they can help us. And I wanted to bring us back before release 11 even, and you might have heard of onion skin paper. Thin sheet of transparent paper that allows you to combine plans. So I have my floor plan, and then I can put in my interior design plan, put in my electrical wiring, my HVAC, and I want them to look like one continuous set. So I'm going to overlay those on top of each other. Then things got kind of modern, and we got into vellum, and if you were really lucky, you got one of these bad boys, light table. So you take all your plans, your thin vellum, your thin onion skin paper, you put it on the light table, it looks like one continuous plan, and then I can put in my work, so my portion of the project. XRefs are trying to replicate that same idea, just in a digital format. And the benefits of doing this, as opposed to putting everything all in one drawing, is that we can have multiple people working at a time. So not just multiple people, but also multiple departments. So as I'd mentioned, we could have the architectural team working on the floor plan. Maybe they've given us the outer location, and we've got the columns. And at the same time, or a little bit later, the interior design team could come in and start placing some furniture. And then going even farther, someone else, landscape architect team, could reference all those files in. So just like the onion skin, we're overlaying these so that we can save time, we're working consistently, but it's also a matter of stability and size. Putting everything into one drawing is a great way to lose everything. Last week and a couple weeks prior, Volker had discussed about recovering your drawing and cleaning it, and we obviously know that things happen sometimes. So it's possible to have everything in one drawing, that drawing crashes, and maybe you lose a lot of it. So you're also spacing it out so that different teams can work, but then also one file gets damaged, you can probably go back to a backup, and everybody's not impacted by that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go into AutoCAD.
And just while you're bringing that up, Christine, I just wanted to mention we do have some folks with your hands up in the GoToMeeting page. If you have any questions, if you could actually just put those into the chat window, and that's our preferred way of handling questions. So rather than raising your hand, if you could put the question in the chat window, we'll make sure to get to it that way.
Thank you, Sean. And actually, while we're doing that, just in case there are some questions or issues with technical or volume things, if you want to put up another poll, where do your files come from? Maybe that'll give people a chance to type out their questions.
So yeah, a few options here as to where they come if you're just sort of a one-man shop or working with multiple people. And it looks like most are receiving them from outside of the company. And then the next most amount is those who just do all their work themselves, which may be why you haven't used XRefs before if you just feel you're the only one using those files. But I think Christina will show some advantages to still having them, the files broke up. And we do have one person that got them from the store.
Perfect. So somebody,
Yeah,
put these things up. You get the file, you don't know who else has touched it before you, but somehow all this stuff came together. And the point is that regardless of how you're working, whether you're one-man team, you have multiple departments, you're getting stuff from surveyors, architects, everybody outside of your office, everyone can benefit from XRefs, especially if you're getting it from the stork and you're not really sure what's going on in those files. You definitely probably want to do your work through an XRef so that you can preserve what you have, because it is possible that someone sends you a drawing that needs to be recovered or purged and cleaned up, and you don't want to track that into yours. So however you're working can benefit from XRef's ability, even if it's just by yourself. So Sean, did we have any questions pop up from the hands raised?
We do not yet, but I'll keep an eye on it and take a moment when you're between sentences to fit it in there.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so first I'm in AutoCAD 2015, and this is my main drawing. I've got the floor plan here, and if I zoom in, you'll see I've talked about walls and columns and stairs and elevators, and that's all I've got at this point. So I'm now going to go to my next department, and I'm now in the interior design team. I'm going to close the floor plan, save my changes, and I'm going to open up the beginnings of a plan for the interior design team, and we're going to reference XRef in that floor plan sample. There we go. So my floor plan, when it opens up, you'll see I have a little sample cubicle design on the side there. And before I even start that XRef, a good practice would be to make a layer just for your XRefs, because I don't want to make the mistake of putting it on a layer that contains other objects that I'm going to freeze, or just putting it on layer 0 because it's there. So I would suggest giving yourself an XRef layer and making that your current layer before you bring it in, because the XRef object will have to reside on some layer. So I'm going to go to the Insert Ribbon tab, and on the Insert Ribbon tab, I'm going to go over to the Reference panel, and then I'm going to click Attach. You could also type X attach if you're just working with the drawing. So I'm going to click Attach. It'll open up a Windows browsing dialog box, and you'll see in the files of type there are multiple objects that can be references or underlays. So again, we're going to mostly focus with drawings, but we could also do images, DGN files from MicroStation, PDFs, DWFs, and if you're working with a product called a Recap, you could have point cloud files. So if you're doing laser scannings of rooms, you can also reference those in. And again, that helps with size and stability because those are big files. All right, so I'm going to select the floor plan sample, and then I'm going to get a dialog box with some options. So reference type we're going to talk about a little bit later on. For now, I'm just going to leave that as attachment. And then I have unchecked my scale and insertion point specify on screen options. And the reason I unchecked that is when you're inserting XRefs, you do want to be cautious of what size and location things are coming at. Now, normally, if I'm working with just myself or someone that's in my company, we're probably using the same units. So we probably don't have someone using inches and someone using millimeters, but obviously if you're getting things from an outside source, you may have to change that scale. So it should typically, over in block units here, it'll tell me what is that XRef coming in at. And that'll help me figure out, do I need to scale this or not? If I'm doing inches and they've got millimeters, obviously there's going to be a difference in size. For now, I'm going to trust that we were all working the same. And the same for insertion point. It's important to talk up front when you're dealing with, especially outside places. What are we using as a reference point? Is the lower left corner of the building going to be 500, 500 so I can set up my plan? Normally, I would say you might need to move it. I try to usually lean on what the other person sent me and move my stuff to that, particularly if I'm dealing with anything that's geospatially related. So if you're getting a file from a land surveyor or civil engineer or a GIS specialist, they typically have put in a geographic location that they need everything placed. So you don't want to bring their XRef in and move it. If it's supposed to be in New Hampshire and you move it over to California, obviously that can make a big change. So those are things to talk about when you're first starting out with the project so that everybody's on the same page. Next, I'm going to look at the path type. So in this drop-down, we have 3 choices: full, relative, and no path. Your full path, it has to do with where this XRef is in relation to the drawing I'm referencing it into. So where is the floor plan drawing in relation to the interior design drawing? If I have a full path, it's going to store that exact path. So C drive, users, Christina Davis, desktop, or Y drive, CAD drawings. That exact path is going to be saved in there. which, again, if you're just working by yourself, that might be okay. But if you're going to be sending files to other people, especially outside of your office, when they open up the XRef, they're going to say, oh, I don't have a C users Christina Davis folder. My XRefs aren't showing. There are ways to fix that. We'll talk about that as well. But that's what happens with the path. It needs to find that exact path. If it doesn't exist or the drawing is moved, it doesn't really know what to do. The one I typically use is relative path. And that's because relative path will do some searching for you. So it doesn't hold that hard path in there for the file, C drive, users, Christina Davis. It's looking at the structure. So if I look at where my interior design drawing is in relation to my floor sample drawing, in my case, they're just both in the same folder, but it's going to look at that folder structure and decide I can either go same folder or search one folder above, one folder below. And there's a couple different ways that you can control how many folders it searches for. At the end of the presentation, the last slide, there is a link that shows you all the different path options. But that one gives you a lot of flexibility. So if you email the drawing to somebody, as long as they don't separate them 10 folder paths apart, they keep them relatively close, the drawing should open up and pull up the XRef at the same time. And then lastly, there's the no path option. So kind of similar to your relative path where it can do some searching for you, but it just has different parameters. So it searches in a certain order. So it'll look for the folder where your host drawing is. So in this case, it would look for the folder that interior design is in, and then see if floor sample, the floor plan is in the same folder. And then after that, it will look for the project name path. So that's a path you can set in your options dialog box. You can also type it as a variable, but whatever that path is, maybe you have a spot where you store all your XRefs, it's going to search there and see if it finds it, and then it'll look in your support folders. Probably in most cases you may not have things in your fonts folder or your, your hatch folder, but if there's a support folder in there where you're placing things, it'll search through there. Again, if it's none of those things and you're not sure how the person sent it to you, but you have the file, there are ways that we can update that. We'll look at that later. All right, I'm going to take relative path. I'm going to leave all my settings as they are because I trust whoever I'm working with because it was me. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm still in that interior design drawing, but here I can see the reference of that floor plan. I'm going to give it a quick save. And then because it's in the drawing almost like a block, instead of individual lines, I see the entire XRef highlights as one piece. But I still have the ability to use my O-snaps to dimension things. I can connect with those objects as if they were in this file. So for example, if I want to take my sample cubicle layout and copy that over into one of these office rooms, you'll see that I can still get snap, endpoint, intersection. All of those will still appear as if those objects were in this drawing. And then I could shift, move around, bring things up as I see fit. All right, a couple other things with XRefs and attaching and detaching them. I'm going to open up the XRef palette, which you can type XRef, or on the Insert Ribbon tab, the reference panel, this little arrow in the corner here, that will open it up as well. So in my External References palette, I see whatever drawings are referenced. Now that includes the host drawings. Remember, the host drawing is the one that we're currently in, interior design. And then floor plan is the one that we just XRef'd in. And if I select that drawing, it highlights on the screen to give me a better feel for what is in that file. Obviously, you could have multiple XRefs in a file, and this is helpful. Now, there are times where you may, like we said, you got a drawing from the stork, and he has XRef'd all sorts of stuff in here, but you only need the outline of the floor. Maybe you don't need to see where the HVAC is or the wiring for what you're doing specifically. Maybe you're just doing some space planning. So I can right-click on that XRef floor plan and unload it. It still keeps the link, so that the two drawings are still connected. It just unloads it for a time. So you may do that to help with performance or just to simplify the drawing so that you can work on what's specifically associated to your tasks. And then to bring it back, I would just right-click and reload. And that brings the display of that XRef back. The other thing we have is detaching XREFs. So right now our floor plan is attached to our interior design and they travel together like buddies. But if I no longer needed it, maybe you referenced it just as a reference. You needed to just see something for a moment and now you don't need that file attached. I can detach that. Now before I detach, I do want to talk about the importance of detaching versus just erasing the XREF. Because we're linking files here, if I were to just take my regular erase command, perfect. I don't see the XREF anymore. It's not in my way. I don't care what everybody else is doing. However, over here in the XRef palette, it's still linked and attached, and it says there's a missing XRef. And you don't want to have people get a file where they say, all right, something's supposed to be linked. Was I supposed to get it? Did they not send it to me? It just causes problems. It can also leave references in the drawing. Kind of like if you have a block inserted, you try to insert it again, and it says it's already defined. So we don't want to have that either. We'll talk a little bit more about circular references later, but make sure that you attach and detach things properly. So I'm going to undo, and then as I said, I can right-click and detach, and now I see that that reference has clearly been removed, and I don't have to worry about having trails of something that I erased. The other method of attaching any of the references is when you have this XRef palette open. The first icon here has a little drop down, and you can click that to choose attach an image, GWF, PDF, whatever file type you're working with. So I'm going to attach floor sample again. I'll leave all my settings as they were, and boom, there it is. And I'm going to do another attachment format type just so you see how that works. We'll do a PDF. And the process is pretty much the same. We're going to go and browse for that file. And actually, I believe what I saved was an image. So we should probably do an image. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take that floor plan image and open. Now, this is a case where you may want to specify on screen where to insert it and what scale, because the images aren't always to scale. They might have been scanned off a sheet and shrunk. All sorts of things could have happened. But we still have the same path types, relative, full, no path. And I can choose the size. I may need to adjust it afterwards. And now I have an image reference, which shows up inside my palette, and it's differentiated with a image icon. So those are the ways we can detach, detach, and unload and reload. One note with PDFs, some of you may have in the past been familiar with OLE objects, and that might have been a way that you brought in references from images or files and you paste special them in. Definitely I'd recommend using the PDF underlay or image underlays, attaching those as references. As we've gone forward, Windows has gone forward, Microsoft, Autodesk has gone forward, OLEs have become a lot less stable. They had their purpose for a time, but the farther we go ahead, their behavior is not as reliable. So if you have used that in the past, I would definitely start moving over to using the references. That'll help you in the long run avoid a lot of odd behavior. Okay, Sean, I'll just check with you real quick. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we actually do have one, which was, can you add or draw on a PDF that is attached?
Yes. So, well, I guess we'll say yes and no. So I can draw over the top of it, and I do get, I can get, depending on how the PDF was made, some snaps if it was a PDF. Now this with an image, I can draw over the top of it, and I'll see my line work. But I'm wondering too if the question is maybe related to like pulling line work out of there. If it is, then we might be looking at a product called Raster Design, which loads on top of AutoCAD, and that can pull line work out of an image and help you do followers. So.
Yeah, and the line work isn't specifically saved to that PDF either.
Correct.
All that PDF is a reference. And unless you are using a tool such as raster design or an equivalent, then you're not going to be writing to that PDF. I'd also like to make two real quick points here. One, the methods that Christina has shown to insert an XRef, keep in mind that is not the only way to do things in AutoCAD. There are so many ways to do things. We can insert XRefs from Design Center, from a tool palette, with the command line. And the other thing, for people who have never worked with XRefs before, one question is, well, as far as the AutoCAD drawing, why shouldn't I just insert it? It makes it that much easier. Why work with these multiple files? I think Christina's outlined quite a few reasons why you shouldn't, because of being able to keep those separate and even recover files, but it also keeps the file size down. Okay, so instead of having one drawing that's going to be about 5 or 25 megabytes in size, you're only going to have a file that's maybe a 1 megabyte in size referencing additional files, which will make the performance of your AutoCAD drawing a lot faster, a lot more efficient.
Absolutely. But really, who has a 1 megabyte file? But yeah, it doesn't have to be 100. So that's helpful. Thank you. And was that it for questions, Sean?
That is the only one at this time, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I want to take a quick look as well at how the layers look when you're dealing with an XRef, because that is something that you will notice is different. So I've opened up Layer Properties Manager, and the first thing I want to look at is the filters. So automatically when you attach a drawing XRef, you'll have an XRef filter, and then under there, each drawing that is attached as an XRef, you'll see its layers. And if I expand the name column, you'll see each layer has a prefix of the name of that drawing / the name of that layer. So it's, even though I'm in a drawing that's probably from the same template and has a lot of the same layers, if I go back to all, you'll see I have layers that are the floor sample files, and then I also have layers, same names, but they don't have that prefix in front of them. So these are different layers. One thing that can be something that takes a little bit of getting used to is if you want to see what layer an object is on, well, because we're in this XRef, I can't just click one line. If I select that and go back to my Home tab, I see everything's on that XRef layer. So if I want to find out what this wall is on, I'll type XList. Now this is an Express tool, so it's only available in AutoCAD. If you're using AutoCAD LT, that wouldn't be available. But in AutoCAD, I can do XList, and it will tell me this layer is Floor Plan Samples Panels 201. So then I can go into Layer Properties and freeze that layer if I wanted individually, and then keep working. So that's just one helpful tool. Also, you might notice that my XRef looks a little faded, not as bright as the office furniture that I placed. And this is all, again, preference. So I like to have the XRef faded so that I can differentiate between stuff that's active in my file versus things I'm just using as a reference. If you'd like to update that, maybe turn it off or adjust the brightness, you can go to the Insert Ribbon tab and click the reference panel. So if you click the word reference, it'll drop down, and this XRef fading bar here allows you to control that. So I can left-click that button there to turn it off, and hopefully through the webinar you'll be able to see the brightness increase. And then I can turn it back on, but maybe I want it to be just a little bit brighter. So, or actually, now I'm going darker. So the higher the number, the more fade I have. So if I want to go brighter, I've got to go the reverse way until it gets close to 0. You can also control that through the XDWG Fade CTL variable. I'll hover over that button so you can see it. And that would
We may have, if you're still talking, Christina, we can't hear you at the moment.
You can.
Oh, there you are. Now you're back.
Oh, my apologies. So where did I leave you?
Just right when you went to the XRef Fading XDWG CTL command.
Oh, just hovering over the variable?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I apologize. Let me throw my button away from me so I don't hit that again. So I was saying is that you can control it from this palette, the drop down, from the ribbon panel, or you can type in XDWG Fade CTL, and increasing the number makes it more faded, decreasing it makes it brighter. This is different from transparency. I think that's the part that probably got cut out. So layer transparency you can print. This is just a graphic. So if you don't add any transparency to your layers and send this to the plotter, your XRefs will come out full color. This is just an aid, a visual aid, because our drawings can get a little busy.
We do, there's a couple of questions. I don't know, is this a good time, or do you want to finish?
Yes, this is the perfect time.
Okay. So the first one, can you attach Excel spreadsheets with XRefs?
Can you an XLS file? Actually, you know what? I don't do those a lot. Not as a reference, but you can create a linked table. So I think the better option would be to do a data link. So on this same panel, insert over by linking and extraction.
Yeah, Excel sheets are one of those ones where people used to use the OLE quite a bit, right? And there were always problems with getting the whole thing to show up, and it would cut it off. So that's always been one of those tricky ones in AutoCAD.
Yeah, so the data link, I won't go through all of it, but you just kind of give it a name, browse to your Excel sheet, and then pick either the work group or tab or section that you'd like. You can also paste as a link as well.
Yeah, and we don't have time in this session to go into it, but there's also a table command in AutoCAD, which is really good for that sort of thing. And I think the table also lets you, you can do it from that way. So same command, but if you go through the table, you can see there it sort of works. They tried to mimic it so it works just like Excel sheets. So not a true XRef in the sense that we're talking about it today, but there are tools in there to enable you to do that.
Yeah, I think this would be a good topic for another webinar, really.
Yeah, let's make a note.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss here, and we would definitely run out of time.
Yeah, so we'll do that one on another day. So the next question is, I use Dropbox to manage files stored on individual computers on which files are updated from cloud storage. I have had problems with version 2013 and 2014 using PDF underlays. They do not save with the drawing file in Dropbox. Subscription help indicated this is an AutoCAD problem. Has this been rectified?
I think probably the alternative now would be where it's being addressed is through 360. I think because what's happening is it doesn't have a concrete path to pull from. There's not like a drive letter. It's just giving us this virtual place to store things, and so XRefs are looking for some sort of pathing option. So I think probably I would say Autodesk 360 is probably where that's being addressed, to use that for cloud purposes, and that does allow for XRefing from that folder. Do you guys have additional choices?
No.
Yeah, no, I think without really getting into a lot of detail, no. So what I would say for Kurt, who asked that question, I did post in to the chat window the feedback link. If you want additional information on that, go ahead and post that question into the chat window, and we can help you with that on more of a one-on-one basis, so we don't sort of hijack the whole class.
The feedback link.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, the feedback link there that I posted, and we'll help you with that. But probably a better one to work with you one-on-one with that one. And
yeah, and XRef links of any type, those were an issue with Autodesk 360 when that was first introduced. It wasn't an issue, it was a limitation, and that has been worked on in AutoCAD 2015 and even improved in upcoming releases of Autodesk 360 itself. So make sure you're updated.
That was it for questions, but there were a few tips. If anybody hasn't seen them yet, Elizabeth made a good point that when you were going back to talking about inserting references, Christina, and they may not come in at the right spot. Elizabeth mentioned you have to keep in mind the base command. If that's not set correctly, in most instances it should be at 000, but if things aren't coming in where they're supposed to be, that's a good command to look at and make sure that things match up there. And then also Graciela had a good suggestion as well, which I've seen a lot of companies do, which is having an XRef specific layer for things that you're bringing in. That can also help with organization. So some good ideas there as well.
Yeah, thank you for those.
And one last comment. I think it's great, this feedback we're getting from everybody attending. We certainly don't know everything about everything. And suggestions like this, maybe we didn't think about bringing them up, you know, it's something that has been discovered as a workaround or whatever. That's great. It's great for everybody attending these sessions. We appreciate that.
I don't know, Sean, that sounded like a dig.
No comment.
All right, excellent. So we're good on questions, and thank you again for the tips. You know, we're all a community, so the more we share, the better. All right, we're good?
We are good.
Okay. All right, so next topic I wanted to go back to was talk about nesting, and this deals with the reference type. I kind of mentioned it real quickly that I was going to use the attachment option. There's also an overlay option, and the way that nesting was first described to me was with the example of the Matryoshka doll. So if, you know, our first doll, A, let's call her Anna, we drop her into the B doll, Barbara. When we put Barbara into Carla, Anna is going to be in there as well. So that's kind of the idea, is that if, you know, the floor plan is my first drawing, and I reference that into the interior design drawing, I can then, as long as it's the attachment option, I can then reference the interior design drawing into my next plan, which will be the landscape architect's drawing. All right, now it's important, again, that it does have to be that attachment type. The overlay option only references it one level up. All right, so I'm going to save this drawing, and actually, by the magic of television, my whole office building is now designed. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to open up a third drawing, which is my landscape architect's team's plan. And we're going to reference in just interior design. And you will see that, like our dolls, Anna and Barbara and Carla, they all come in together. So I'm going to do it right from the palette that I still have open. And I'm going to attach GWG. And then I'm going to browse for the interior design drawing. Same prompts as far as my scale insertion. But then again, I want to make sure it's attachment, which allows me to do the nesting. Now, a lot of places will do the overlay to just go one level up because they don't want the files, you know, kind of dragging on and going forward. Also, if people aren't very careful with how they're working with their XRefs, you can run into something called circular references, which I'll show you a little bit later. So I'm going to do attachment. And then if I look, I can see that I've got the original floor plan, my lovely office spaces, and I've also got that image that we inserted as well. So now, from that department that I'm in now, landscape architecture, I could add whatever vegetation I need to the plan using everyone else's work as a reference. Now, if for some reason, this is a good time to actually talk about updating your XRefs. If you forgot to make it an attachment type, their reference type of attachment, you can now, in recent versions, change that. So if I go back to the interior design and in my palette I highlight floor plan, I can see that there is a type at the bottom here, attach. And there's a drop down where I can pick attach versus overlay. So if I change it to overlay and save, we'll see when we go into landscape architect, this is another one of the, you know, beauties of working with XRefs, is I've got all these people working on these files. How does anybody know when something's updated? And they'll know because when you save the drawing, it gives me an alert that says your interior design drawing has changed, you should reload it. Now, some people obviously don't like the bubbles. They shut them off. If you don't have the bubbles on, your XRef palette will also show you with the exclamation point which files are in need of reloading. And then also at the top, you can refresh your references to see if you've missed anything. So I'm going to click the bubble and reload. And now, because I'm using that overlay option, I don't see that floor plan. I'm only getting that one level. All right, and in the reverse way, again, it's just a matter of I can come back to interior design, switch it back to attach, save, make sure you're saving. Saving is the key. And then make that, and then update that inside the landscape architect file. All right, so attach, make sure I save. And this would be the same even if we're not attaching or detaching, if we're drawing new objects. As soon as the person saves, your coworker, you'll get that alert once it travels, or once you've actually hit save properly, like that. All right, so I seem to have a little delay. There we go. Excellent. So we'll update, and it should bring in now that floor plan. And you'll forgive me, my clicking seems to be a little delayed, so I apologize if I have to click more than twice. You don't have to double click these things. It's just not reacting. All right, so there's our plan coming through. Also with updating, we talked earlier about how if you send files to someone or you're getting files from somebody else, there may be times where an XRef is not found because either they saved it with a full path and that path doesn't exist at your office, or they moved everything, they put everything all in one folder and zipped it up to you and it's no longer in the same spot it was. You can change the paths by highlighting them in this XRef palette. I'm going to expand that a little bit. And you'll see that when something is missing, you have a found at path and you have a saved path. So if I close these files, we'll do a quick test. So let's say they didn't even send me an interior design plan, or they didn't send me the floor plan. That happens too. Sometimes people forget. I'm just going to delete this. Once that drawing closes, I should be able to delete that. All right, and while I'm trying to get this, because I'm losing some memory here, do we have any questions, Sean?
Not at this time. We're up to date.
There we go. And I apologize if we're getting any feedback, because I'm actually hearing some volume issues as well, so hopefully that's not coming through on your end. All right, so I'm going to reopen Landscape Architect drawing. And you'll see in my command line, if I'm paying attention, I'll see that floor plan sample cannot be found. And you'll also get a dialog box that tells you, I can't find this. And it's basically saying, do you have it? Now, in some cases, you might know, nope, they didn't send it to me. I'm not working on that part. It doesn't matter. And I can ignore it. But if I want to update it, it would just bring me over to my XRef palette. And what I'm looking for is that saved path. So I would hit the ellipse button, the 3 dots at the end, browse to where that drawing is. Remember, ours is in our recycle bin. So I'm just going to restore it. And then I can reattach that file. So it knows that the reference is still there. It doesn't just drop it because it doesn't find it, but it gives you the option to update that. And again, we talked about the different path types and how you're saving full path versus relative. There is going to be a link on one of the last slides with additional resources about how you can type in different paths so that it finds your your XRefs quickly. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on for the sake of time, and we'll take a look at clipping in XRef. So for that, I'm just going to select my XRef and use the ribbon. So the contextual ribbon will automatically bring me to an external reference tab. And there's some commands we've already looked at in terms of editing reference, external references palette. And I'm going to create a clipping boundary. And this allows me to isolate just a small portion of the XRef that I'm going to be working on. So again, I might do this just to simplify the file or to make it move a little bit faster. There's a couple of variables that relate to that as well on that last additional resource slide. But I'm going to tell it the kind of shape I want. I'm just going to do a rectangle. I'm going to pick 2 points, and then right away it hides everything on the outside of that window or whatever shape I'm doing. I'm able to come in and adjust that if I need to. Maybe I went too small. I can also invert it. So there's an arrow, a little teal arrow. If you left click, that will invert your clipping. So instead of hiding everything on the outside, hides everything on the inside. And then if I decide I no longer need that, I can go back up to the ribbon and remove the clipping. All right, so again, your choice depending on how much of the file you need. And we'll take a look now at archiving the drawing. So you might have heard about the command called bind, and you might have been told never do it because things can be changed and altered forever if that happens. And that's not really good advice. Bind is there for a purpose, it just has to be used properly. So one example is when you're archiving a drawing. Because we have all of these different files referenced and linked, if you're archiving, you're usually going to be moving it to somewhere else. So maybe those paths are going to be totally different. They might even be jumping an entire drive letter, which AutoCAD is not going to be able to figure out. I need to jump to the J drive when I used to be on the G drive. It can't do that. So keeping that package all together, you can bind the XRefs. It will remove the path and insert these files into the drawing like they were blocks. All right, and again, we talked about not just putting things in as blocks for the sake of performance, but again, we're archiving this and saving a record. So I'm going to type bind, and actually, the one that I wanted to look at first was the forgive me, Volker. Be my brain. Is he there? There we go, Xbind. Thank you, Volker. So Xbind.
Anytime.
Couldn't find it. So Xbind, the benefit of Xbind is that I can choose specific objects. It can add, an entire file, but I can also just say, I only want to bind certain parts. Right? And this may be useful. Excuse me. This may be useful if there's just certain parts of the drawing that you'd like to be inserted. Maybe you are going to maintain the path when it's archived and you will have some folder structure in there, but this gives you some control over that as opposed to just inserting everything in right away.
The one thing after you insert those, you're going to have a very unique name for that file. So you may want to go back into the rename command and take a look at them and just quickly rename them to clean them up. The choice is yours, obviously.
And we did the blocks. So here, in the middle here, you can see the interior design. So kind of like when we looked at layer properties the first time and we saw floor sample / the name of the layer, we're now seeing interior design, $, $0, and then whatever that object, in this case the block, was. And I see something flashing on my screen. Do we have a question, Sean?
There is one that just came in, which is Xbind. Is Xbind useful to add layers to drawings, I believe is the question.
To add layers. We might need some clarification.
That would be more of a, I think, if I understand it correct, Raciel, I think what you're asking is if you have layers in a different file and you want them in your current file, could you use Xbind? But I think Design Center is probably more in line with that. With Design Center, and I don't want to stray too far from what we're doing, but with Design Center you can actually go to other files and then drag and drop objects from those files into your current drawing. So I think that's what Christina's going to show here. So see, she went to a different file. It shows all the layers. She can now simply drag and drop one of these layers right into the existing file. And then this file then has those layers in this drawing as well.
And frankly, Design Center is going to be a lot cleaner. It's a good idea to show the Xbind command because it is very useful. But dragging and dropping multiple layers or blocks into your drawing is going to be cleaner. You aren't going to have to use the rename option afterwards.
Does that answer your question, Graciela? Hopefully. Okay, great. So that, again, that's the quickest way that I like to get to that is just ADC right at the command line for, I think it's AutoCAD Design Center, and then you can do it that way.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on just to hit those last two topics that we had, so we have some time left over for Q&A. Demand loading. So demand loading is something in your options dialog box when we go to the Open and Save tab. And this has to do with being able to work with others. So when we're dealing with XRefs, if I want the architect to be able to keep working and refining their design while I, in interior design, am trying to get my space planning done, and then the landscape architect wants to work as well, I don't want the landscape architect to be locking everybody else out from using those files just because he or she has them XRef'd in. So what we typically would have this set to is enabled with copy so that the architect can keep working, and when he saves, interior design gets an update and they can save, and then the landscape architect will also get an update, but everyone can keep working. Now it doesn't mean that more than one person can have the read access to that file, so you still just, one architect, one interior designer, one landscape architect, but it does allow so that everyone's not locked out just because someone has it as an XRef. And then one of the other exclamation points I had was the ref edit command. So this one can be very tempting because you're thinking, all right, I'm in here. It's kind of like a block, so when I want to edit a block, I go to block edit and I make some updates. And if I pick an XRef, there's a button here that says edit reference in place, and you see that command there, ref edit. This is another tool that, again, it has its uses, but you do need to be cautious with it. The idea is that I'm now working in that XRef, but what typically happens is people forget that they're actually in the ref edit mode. So you've drawn in a couple of walls that you needed, and you didn't remember to save and finish your ref edit session. Nested objects, let me try that one more time. Okay. Obviously, you cannot ref edit if you've already bound it. So, my apologies. I bound it so there's nothing to reference. But what happens is you're referencing it in place. If you don't remember to save that ref edit session and close it so that you're back into, in this case, the landscape architect drawing, I could start putting in trees and putting in shrubs and then realize, oh no, I added all my trees and shrubs to the interior designer's plan. And now I've got to, either redo it, go in, copy, paste. So it's a matter of making sure you're paying attention. I still am frightened of it, that and like clowns. So I always go and just open the XRef. So if there's an XRef that I, want to work with, I would just rather go in and open the reference and open up that specific drawing, make my changes in there, save it, and close it. But just be mindful that if you're in a ref edit session, you have to close the ref edit session, ref close, to make sure that you're not adding stuff to the wrong drawing. Okay, so Sean, I think we have maybe two more polls. One more poll about types of XRefs people will be using.
Yep, I just launched that, so if you have a moment to let us know, that would be great. Looks like just about everybody is picking the DWG, but then also some DWF and PDF options, some images. So again, pretty much right across the board on this one.
Excellent. And actually, one I probably should have put in there as well was DGN. If people are doing that as also another option that you have.
You wanted the final one as well?
Yeah, so we can do the final poll as well.
Okay. And you did have DGN in there, by the way. There were
I did.
A few,
okay.
Yeah, and that was 13%, so some are using that as well.
Excellent. My future self realized that when my past self did not. Perfect. And as Volker had mentioned as well, we did try to hit a lot of things at once. Definitely, I know Volker's going to work on posting up the slide deck, make it available to everyone. So there is a slide at the end, I'll go to that now, with some additional resources. So some more information about attaching, detaching, reference path, so that full relative no path, some variables that will have an aid in working with XRefs, like project name, index CTL, XBind we looked at, and then some others that we didn't cover here, but we've looked at other webinars like Recover All. So remembering too that your host drawing can get corruption at times, but XRefs are still drawings as well. So Recover All is a fast way to run a recover on the first drawing as well as anything else attached. And then one additional tool, there's a reference manager that's outside of AutoCAD, Start Programs, Autodesk. And this is a way as well to go in and change a lot of paths quickly. So if you're moving new drive letters or even sometimes for archiving, it's a way to go in and see your paths and browse and update those.
Or when a client sends you files.
Yeah, that's another
and
option too.
the paths are hard-coded. Or you can also, it's a great tool to see what is missing from the set and generate a report and tell your client, hey, I didn't get these files. So something to look into.
They'll, of course, say, yeah, we sent them, and you'll say, no, you didn't, and 24 hours later. That's the part that we can't help with. But hopefully having some of that understanding, you're at least able to say, this is why I know you didn't send me those files, and give yourself some ground to stand on.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess the only thing I have to add to this real quick is that Christina had talked about the ref edit command, and there's also the xopen command allowing you to edit the files. Keep in mind, if you're working in a work group, there's a reason these are called reference files. Chances are people don't want you to modify the base map, or you want to make sure things don't get modified. So modify them with discretion. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Excellent. So I don't know if we have any more questions, Sean?
We don't, just some comments that some people are enjoying the sessions. I just wanted to make one comment, and we actually do have one more question that just came in. So most folks said the session was helpful today, some said somewhat. So we'd also like to ask on the feedback link that I posted, we'd love to hear your feedback as well, not only on the sessions we've held, but also on what you want to hear for future sessions. So we're trying to make these as useful as we can for you guys. You're the ones out there using the product. So if there are particular things you want to hear about in future webinars, please use the feedback link for that as well. And we'll make sure to fit those in to future sessions. And then the last question we did have, which you probably won't be able to answer in 2 minutes, but it was asking just for additional information on circular XRefs.
Oh yes, and that was my flaw for not hitting that at the time. What I'll do, I'll put a post. Volker and I can work together on putting a post into the feedback link, so the same one, and we'll just put that in. I'll make a note.
Yeah, we could even put together a quick video and throw in a link for that, because it really helps to demonstrate the circular reference error, as it pops up.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I apologize for that, but we will get that up there today.
I think that's everything from the chat windows.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I do really appreciate the questions, the tips, the useful things that you found. Please, give us more feedback. As Sean said, we want these to be enjoyable for you and helpful to you, so letting us know what you're looking for would be great. One of the things that actually came out of one of our past webinars was Volker did a poll, what would you like to know more about plotting? And we got really positive response that everything. We want to know everything more in detail about plotting. So the next webinar that'll be coming up is making the most of layouts and page setup. So definitely hope you can join us there. The link is available to register, and glad to see you. All right, so if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank Sean and Volker and everyone for attending.
Great job, Christina. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for attending.
We'll see you all next week.